The Wholeness Network. Awaken to the reality of wholeness. Alaya Chikly has helped people to discover and connect with the wisdom of their hearts and reach higher levels of consciousness for over 20 years. Heart-centered therapy she created is globally recognized and acclaimed healing and transformational process. It has been acclaimed by MDs, PhDs, and psychologists worldwide.
The first time that I met Alaya was in a heart-centered therapy training class, and I didn't know what I was signing up for. I wasn't sure what heart-centered therapy was, but I really wanted to help people heal and find healing in their lives. And so as I came to this class, I just remember you telling us your life story, one of the within a couple of hours, and you stood there with this beautiful, big, open heart, and yet told us stories and stories of pain and trauma and hardship in your life. And I just remember thinking, how can she do that? You know, so often it's such a natural response when we go through trauma or pain that we shut down our heart, we protect our heart, we put up all these heart walls. And so to just see you there so fully present and so full of heart and love was really inspiring for me. And I remember thinking, if what she does can heal her traumas, mine's covered. We're good. And I had just never felt really in my whole life someone with such an open heart, and that taught me, just being in your presence for 4 days taught me as much as the class material and what I was trying to learn. So share a little bit about your story growing up.
Okay, my story. And it's a story. I was about 3 years old when my mother and father had difficulties in their marriage. I was the second child, and my mother was having an affair, and she didn't want to be with my father. And when she told him, his heart was broken and he started to beat her. And it came to the place where he tried to kill her. And at that time, of course, it was too dangerous for her to stay. And she left. But she forgot to take us with her. So my father took us to his mother's, and eventually they worked out their divorce, and they both remarried when I was 5 years old. And my father was always had his difficulties, his pain, and my mom was fortunate enough to find this incredible man that she just deeply fell in love with and just embraced her, so she was able to move forward. But when I was 12 years old, my father, in his second marriage, didn't want to be with her and fell in love with a woman next door. And when she reneged on their commitment to each other, he shot her and killed himself. And I remember the night that I was told that he had passed, it was like I could feel like I evaporated.
Oh, wow.
You know, there was like something, it was really like a death, that something had lifted, and that was me. And 2 months later, I was raped by 2 drug addicts. They had drugged me and they were on drugs, and that was kind of like the last day for sure of childhood. And from that point on, it was a devastation for me. I had no recovery from that. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know how to express my pain. And the next 28 years many years, were extremely difficult, because in that I remember feeling that if my father did that, then who am I? And that was so huge, because it became my identity. And I realized that in order to stay connected to him, I felt like I took his pain. And all the energies that he was unable to bear. So if you could imagine, as a young woman, I was just going into high school at that time. I was 13, and you could say that I know what it is to walk on this earth without my soul.
Right.
Completely disconnected and not feeling that I was good enough or I had a right to say no to anything or to anyone.
Wow.
So if you could imagine the turmoil that I carried, and when I was 28 years old, it came to a point where I had attracted so much negativity to me that I could see that it was the end point for me. There was a window of opportunity for me to leave, and I didn't know how to stop that leaving. So I kind of surrendered to that, and I went to the beach, and I was just, the ocean is my connection, and I stood in the water, and I looked out into this. It was a gray and dark day, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to accept this. And then there was like this voice that came up inside of me, and it said, no, you will not die. And it was so strong and so affirmative that I had to stop. And I had recalled something that a friend had said to me, and he said, why don't you pray? And I said, I can't pray because I don't believe in anything. There's nothing to pray to. And he said, well, why don't you use the word if? And his words came back to me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't use the word God or something like that, but I could say, if there is a divine universe, then I am talking to you. Please listen. I need help. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, please. Just don't make me be a preacher. It's my first prayer. And in this prayer, again, I know that there was sincerity and deep reaching out. So I went home that night, and of course, the divine was already interacting, and I got phone calls, and I was connected to this woman. Her name was Roberta, and she was a mystic, and she said, don't worry, honey, you're going to be okay. She says, but what I need you to do is go to the store, buy kosher salts, because you are going to be taking a bath. You need 2 candles, you need a Bible, and put it in the bath and around the bath. White washcloth. Then you're going to say this prayer. She said, write it down clearly.
Wow.
And it was a prayer to Jesus. So the universe is stretching me.
Right.
I took this prayer and I put it on the side of the bathtub, and I was crying, and I was reading this prayer, and I was washing myself and asking. It was a divine cleansing. It was to Jesus, asking for cleansing of my body, mind, and soul. And I washed myself, and there was a moment when I realized I hadn't washed the top of my head. And I took the washcloth and I put it over the top of my head, and suddenly there was this light that shot through me with such a force that it knocked me against the back of the bathtub. It had sound, it had feeling, it had power, and I was quite mystified. Yeah. And I laid there, and I remember the sound, the feeling of the water rocking back and forth. And when it calmed, there was this stillness that I knew that my life would never be the same again. That I had reconnected to my soul. And that was like the greatest thing that could ever happen to a young girl walking around this planet without a soul. So I got up out of the tub, and I knew that my life would be okay, that I was safe. And I heard that my responsibility was, now that I had my soul, I had to listen. So I promised I would listen, and I was also guided, no TV, no music with words, no newspaper. So those are the days of newspapers. So that happened, and this is when I started to meditate. And meditation was my commitment to my promise that I would always listen. This was how I learned through my heart to receive information and guidance throughout my life. And that I received my work in heart-centered therapy through the guidance and the experience. So I would be given something and I would share it. And the work just continued to grow. And it's been many, many years now, maybe 25 years since I started my work. So I was quite excited in my life that I had these tools. And a lot of things changed. And where the biggest change, when I really started to begin heart-centered therapy, I was in Thailand, and I was at a time where I really was asking for answers and some help, and I was guided to go to a temple. And I went to this temple, and there was a little Zen master there. And he looked at me, because I had run ahead of the other people that I was with, and I ran in, and he said, "Oh, you, hello, come in, have tea with me. And bring your friends too." So we had tea, and he sat with me and he said, "Alaya, I know you. I recognize your soul. Please stay with me. I take care of you, I give you food. You're safe here." So I stayed for 6 weeks, and I was already deep into my meditation, but in that temple, I was there meditating 8 hours a day. I was really deep into it, and there was this cave that was so deep that I would go into until there was no light, and I would sit there and I imagined that this was my unconscious, all the pain and all the things that I had never faced. And I sat there with Kleenex and crying and candles and prayer. And then one day I saw an image of myself with a machine gun, and I had shot these people that were coming towards me, and it terrified me. And what I was guided to do was to look into the eyes of myself as that young girl that was being violent. And it was so upsetting to me, because I thought, oh my gosh, this is the violence of my father, and I'm violent, and I'm bad, and I'm this, and I'm that. So you can imagine. So what I did is I looked into her eyes, and I really could see her pain, I could see her longing, I could see her heart, and I embraced her. I totally embraced her. And we were together, and I really unified with her, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's a box there that my foot had been on. And I thought, well, I think maybe I better open the box. And so I cautiously opened this box, and what was inside was a child, a baby, that was pure innocence and pure love. And I took that child to my heart, and that was the beginning of understanding how to work with healing trauma.
Wow.
So it was a very, very special beginning.
Yeah. Well, that's so neat. That's so neat. Well, you didn't have to become a preacher, but you became a teacher for sure.
Much better. I like the tea.
But with the heart, and how did that? Did you immediately connect with the heart, or was that an awakening to the power of the heart? What was that like, knowing that that was going to be your big tool?
You know, it's really strange, because through all those years of difficulty, I remember myself saying, they can take my power, they can take my dignity, but they'll never take my heart.
Wow.
And that I hung on to. That's like, oh, that was the best thing for me. It was really empowering. And I did, through it all, I did sustain that ability to stay connected.
Wow. Because it was so powerful, even you couldn't push it away. But
Yes.
it was so part of you.
Yes.
So it was a tool to. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I had never used my heart the way I do
Right.
now.
Right. Right.
I knew it differently then.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you use your heart now, for those that don't know.
How do I use my heart? I am absolutely passionate about going to bed at 9 or 9:30 so I can wake up and meditate.
Yeah.
And I make myself a cup of coffee. And I sit for at least 2 to 3 hours every day.
Yeah.
And I listen, as I promised to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, sometimes life is difficult and I listen to the monkey mind and I know I'm going to stay here and get through this because I know I'll get back to my heart.
That's helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes I just feel like, oh, monkey brain. We'll try again next time. Yeah.
Let's just shorten this for a while. They still keep coming back.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's so great.
And so, heart-centered therapy, if I could just tell this story, I struggled as a child with my depression and could never really find what I felt like was the cure. I had all these negative thoughts and they would keep coming up, and a thought would come up and I would try to change the thought and think positive, but it just didn't stick. You know, it could be a momentary change, but it wasn't a permanent change. And I just remember searching, thinking, I want to find, there has to be a way. There has to be a way that I can get to the core of this and find what it is that is making me think these negative thoughts. And that search went on for a long time until I found you. And to me, that is the power of heart-centered therapy. It can take you back to those traumatic moments, but really find resolution and healing of those core traumas of our lives that have changed our belief about ourselves and our life and the world. And so how did that evolve into a process that you teach? How did you find that method of healing? Did it start with yourself?
Well, I've found that whenever we have an unresolved emotion in our bodies and it creates us coming out of our sacred design, that it has something to do with something that happened when we were children. Mm-hmm. When you understand that perhaps the emotion, if you connect to it, says, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I want to hide, I'm afraid of people. And you understand that and you resolve that, you look at that, those are the words and the feelings of the child that we're still holding in our bodies. Mm-hmm. So that once we resolve the emotion, we can actually go to the deeper unconscious. It's another level, it's not the whole thing, but to that place in time as children where that original trauma happened. So perhaps something happened that we felt that we were abused or unloved. Mm-hmm. And what happens is like, it's not so important what happened.
Right.
The story is not important. Mm-hmm. That's what I really in my heart know. Mm-hmm. It's what we decided. Mm-hmm. What did that mean to us? Did that mean that I have not a right to exist? Does that mean that I don't have value? Does that mean that I can't express myself? Does it mean I have
like
to
your
hide?
Interpretation of the story?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what it means personally to me.
Yes.
If my father did that, then who am I?
Right.
It's kind of like that.
Right.
So once we make a decision about what that means, there's no space for the fullness of who we are. So we have to give up something.
Right.
If you give up your voice, then you give up a part of you that knows how to express. If you shut down your heart, then you give up the part of you that knows how to love and connect. So we give up our truth, our trust, our souls.
Yeah.
And because we know ourselves, we can track it. And usually we bury a part of ourselves, our little girl, or inside, the part that's holding the trust or love. And we can access that. And when we look into the eyes of that part of ourselves, we can see that it is still pure, it is still brilliant and conscious and loving and waiting.
Yes, very much so.
Waiting to be seen.
Waiting to be seen, yes, absolutely. And once we see it, and once we hold that beam of love and connection, that part can integrate again. And once that part integrates again, the child has more strength.
Mm-hmm.
And then the child can actually connect to the parent,
Mm-hmm.
whoever is holding or is engaged in that trauma as well. And then we can hold space for our mothers and fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Because we look at that, it's like then we start to understand, oh, if my mother isn't confident and she's afraid and she's always feeling isolated,
Mm-hmm.
we learn that,
Right.
right? And we take that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's perfect to give up something because mom already did it.
Right.
And now I'm just like mom, and now I fit,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right? You fit into the little picture.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at that and we are allowed to express, to speak to our parents, to listen to their hearts, we understand that they had a lot of pain that they never knew how to deal with, that they have never been able to resolve their own issues.
Yeah.
So what we do is that we help, actually the child is the hero, and holds a place and support for the parents to be able to heal. And our parents need to heal.
Yeah.
Why?
Mhm.
Because we need them to love us. They're the resource.
Yeah.
So once they're okay, then that bond of love will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then everything's different. And our parents really do get to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when we go a bit further, when we look at within the family dynamic, this just didn't happen either, that we look to the lineage. If it's mother, we look to her lineage. If the trauma's with the father, we look to his. And we go back in time and we're able to access, sometimes hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years, an original trauma that was so unbearable that there was a decision that was made. Say perhaps if it was a famine or a war or loss of children, so many things can happen, right? And it's so painful. How am I going to bear this?
Yeah.
They make a decision perhaps, I won't feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just seal myself. I'll numb myself. I'll protect myself. I'll never love again. I'll never open again. I'll be responsible, but that other part, no, unbearable. So this decision, because the body reads it as a biological success, right? Says, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yes, if this is what we have to do in order to survive,
Yeah.
we will
Right.
do it.
Right.
So this is passed down generations,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when we can look at our mothers and to see that within her mother-father relationship, that she suffered the same thing and made the same decisions. And it goes back in time to the first one. So that we can actually support the ancestor to heal that trauma, engaging everybody that was involved in the trauma.
Yeah.
And you see how it's so mirroring the family dynamic, that everybody takes a part in it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And it's even more fascinating because everything is inside of us. That's the library that we have. We have the library and the access to all the information we need. And when we trust that, when we go to those places, it's incredible. So that we can actually heal a whole lineage of people and include everyone that was also engaged or involved.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that the ones that were perhaps responsible, let's call them the persecutors, right?
Okay.
Suffer more the ones that were persecuted.
Oh, wow.
Because they are holding the energies of darkness or pain or anger or fear, and that is a burden of the soul, a deep, deep burden.
Would you say because in order to do the perpetrating, they needed to be so wounded themselves?
Yes.
So that it's compounded?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And that wounding is also,
Right.
sometimes when you portray that onto a victim, the victim will become the persecutor.
Right.
as we see a lot in
Yes.
sexual
Uh-huh.
violations.
Yeah.
The violated will become the violator,
Right.
which is difficult.
Yeah. Well, you see if I don't want to be the victim, so my choice is perpetrator.
Right.
Becomes a black and white issue.
Or you might say that I don't want to be that darkness. I'll
Right.
just be the victim. But then you
Right.
get so identified in being the victim,
Yeah.
then you keep creating.
Right. It becomes one or the other.
Yes.
Two of the things that you just talked about are two of my favorite things about heart-centered therapy. That, first of all, you can heal generations at a time, and I've seen generational healing, sometimes one person at a time, but I just love that connection when you go through a whole family lineage and find that repeated limiting belief or thought, and the freedom that comes when you can truly feel your ancestors being liberated from that is so powerful. So that is something I love, but also the fact that this takes into account even the perpetrator,
Yes.
that we don't leave any stone unturned in this work, and truly the heart could only look at the situation that way, with
Yes.
compassion for both sides. The heart can't see any other way,
Yes.
right? And so it's really a beautiful process to see into the eyes of that offender or perpetrator and really find a resolution and peace that lets you move on. Because when you see past their anger or their hatred or their violence or their this, you see they're just another human being that's struggling too,
With a broken heart.
with a broken heart.
Yeah.
And it removes the threat, it removes the pain, it removes just so much anguish that keeps you tied to those traumas and fear. You know, you then can resolve that so beautifully. So anyway, that's something that I love.
Yes, it is. It's like for me and my father, at first the judgment and the fear of everything he did kept me from healing. But once I was able to embrace that and to feel his heart and to understand through the lineage of what happened, my heart just opened so much.
Wow.
And I could support him to be able to love himself,
Right.
to forgive himself with my love. That's all he needed, was really to know that he was still loved. Yeah.
The exact same thing, whether that you needed. Didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all we, that's really truly what we need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So how many years after that moment in the tub did you begin to create heart-centered therapy?
Well, the idea came, as soon as I looked into the eyes of myself and I saw how powerful it was that I could look into the eyes and they told me so much.
Wow.
They were so honest and so pure. And through the violence, I saw purity and fear, but wrapped in fear, wrapped in uncertainty. And that it penetrated to the truth, to the core. And then somehow everything was okay. I understood something.
Yeah.
Something super important.
Oh, wow.
And I'd just like to say that because of the work that I've done, I really, with all my heart, know that we are all pure and we are all good. There is no good guys and bad guys. There are entrapped guys and free guys. And what we can do is support those that are entrapped, believing that they aren't loved and they're not okay, and they don't have a right to exist. They have to suffer, they have to keep themselves condemned or held back. That's a part of my soul mission, is to help us understand that everybody needs that love. Everybody responds to that love if they can forgive themselves. And that's sometimes the difficult part, to support them to be able to open to it. It's not that they don't want it.
Right.
Am I worthy?
Right.
So sometimes it takes a lot of love. And we get through.
A lot of convincing.
Yeah.
Wow. And you teach around the world, so it's been something that's worked in all kinds of cultures. It goes across nationalities, the gift
yes.
of love, the
Yes.
belief in love, the understanding of love.
Yes. I've noticed that there's like different cultural issues
Oh.
in different countries, so that I start to understand, what they need and what their deeper issues are.
That's fascinating.
Like in Iceland, they're Vikings, if you can imagine, settled on an island that's really quite harsh environments, so that they lost a lot of children. They've starved, and they've been through so much, so that they become very strong and convicted to not feeling.
Wow.
Although they are very sensitive. So to help them to get beyond those barriers and to know that they're safe enough to be able to really come into this openness of sharing love.
Wow. That's amazing.
And you've talked about Germany before.
Oh my gosh, Germany. I have a love affair with Germany, and to work with them, these are the grandchildren of the Nazi era,
Yeah.
and how much guilt they had carried, and the shame. And I remember understanding that one of the things that they held was that if it were me at that time, would I do it again?
Yeah.
Would I do the same thing? So there was like a disconnect from their trust in their goodness, in being able to make right decision.
Wow.
So that was a very strong
That's
point.
fascinating.
And it's in every country, it's just a little bit different.
Yeah.
I love it. And it's so endearing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
can
love
understand.
them.
Yeah.
So one question for you, Alaya. You've talked so much about the relationship with mother and father, but there are people who have both parents living and they don't have a good relationship they don't have that support, or they can't trust, or so what would you recommend for people like that who are struggling in their day-to-day life to find connection?
Well, a session.
Yes. Agreed.
Always a session. Good idea.
That really helps.
It does.
Because to
Yeah.
go inside and to support our parents,
Yeah.
to be able to feel that, it's like when we understand that even though we're getting an image of our parents and looking into their eyes and we're talking to an image, we are speaking to their consciousness. They are feeling us and they are hearing us. And sometimes they feel it without barriers, but they all feel it.
Yeah.
And there's a change in the shift. Because when we start seeing our parents differently, it affects them. If you could imagine, I've seen so often that a child, when they had no resource to fight back, the greatest power they had over their parent is to judge them and to not love them. Right?
Oh, wow.
That'll get even with them, huh?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Right? So
Yeah.
as long as they hold that lock and they see their parent in that judgment, then the parent is trapped in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our thoughts are really, really powerful, and they don't go unnoticed. So when we are able to shift that perception because we understand on a deeper level of the problems and what they had to take on,
Yeah.
then, and we can clear that and they can speak to us as we go through the process, then it's very, very deep. And people do change, families do change.
Yeah.
So the inner is really a strong ground to work on. If we understand that we are powerful in our hearts and we can connect and speak to anybody and everyone, and they will listen. If we come with love.
Yeah. So great. So tell us a little bit about the classes classes that you teach and what you do. Tell us, there's 4 levels, is that right?
Well, I have 4 classes.
4 classes. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
first class is pretty much what we talked about now, and it's really important because we learn how to navigate from our hearts, and we know we get the confidence that we can heal anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's level 1, we have our wings.
Yeah.
And healing the transgenerational is super powerful.
Yeah.
So it gives us that confidence, and it's really an affirmation of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
You can't leave there feeling anything but empowered.
True. True.
And level 2, as we go in to the lineage, both lineages, well, actually we connect with the mother, father, master cell, which is, we have, do you want me to explain that?
Great.
Is that okay? It's like everything is with intention, yes. And I had heard that in the Tibetan tradition that when there's conception within the first 8 divisions, that one cell of the mother and one cell of the father never divide again, and that they hold very strongly the information. It's like the main library for the mother-father lineage.
Wow.
It's amazing, isn't it? So, and it has, the ovum also never divides. So they have a very unique mission,
Yeah.
so to speak. So once we heal, what we focus on is what was it that enabled our parents from fully and totally loving each other so that they could bring us into the world in full love. So it's a big piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a fabulous and a strong piece.
Yeah.
Because that opens a space for our mothers and our fathers to connect to their body wisdom, call it their higher body consciousness, to connect to their souls, to connect to us as ovum and sperm, and to set a ground where we can experience sacred conception. And then we move through the whole 9 months, and we look at each month to make sure that every trauma and misunderstanding that might have happened in that time is cleared. Because so many things can happen. You can't imagine, and sometimes it's so innocent. And there was a woman who had never bonded with her mother, and she realized in class that her mother had taken a medication to be able to hold the baby. And she felt like it was killing her. And she thought her mother was trying to kill her, yet her mother was trying to hold her.
Oh, wow.
So all her life, she had disconnected and held a boundary. And when she discovered that, just that one piece, if you could imagine, her whole world just melted. So she really recreated her relationship with her mother, and there's 1,000 stories that you could tell. But in each month there's so many things that can happen.
Yeah. It's amazing from a session how, like, almost immediately for me, the so many of the experiences just click forward that, oh, that's where it showed up, and that's where it showed up, and that's where it showed up, and you can almost see how you had to take a different direction because it was just, there wasn't another way, and almost how it does heal that too. I mean, in a way, it heals that and makes it so that you could have taken the other way and get to where you are. It's like these little doors that just go and lines them all up. And it's just amazing.
Makes sense of it all.
Yeah, it makes sense of it. Yeah, exactly. So.
And so people that would really benefit from that process, that your level 2 class really teaches a rebirth or goes through a rebirth process, but there's a lot of people that have birth trauma, whether it came from the environment, from mother, from father, like you said, from the conception, whether they were wanted, how the environment of their surroundings, whether it was time of war. I mean, there's so many pieces that affect their safety. So that is a great process for anybody who feels like they've struggled from a difficult birth
Yes.
situation.
And had a very traumatic birth, because we make a lot of decisions.
Yes.
At the time of birth, first touch. You know, what was that first touch like? Who was the first person that looked into your eyes, and what did you see? Because that's a mirror reflecting, like, oh, that's who I am. You know? And if it's full of love, they go, oh, yes. And if it's discerning and angry, it's confusing. That's me. Right? It's very fascinating, the tenderness of every single step of it, and how the child is integrating all this information. So we miss all those innuendos. We truly miss it. So it's so beautiful when we go through the birth that we can feel that our mother's bodies are in sync with mother and us, in that there's a unified field again that completely and totally supports and is aware of all the movement, all the flow, all the contractions on every level is like perfect symphony, if we allow it in love. Otherwise, it's just chaos and fear and contraction. And there are women having ecstatic births. And we can do that if we believe we can do
Right. It's true, because the conscious belief right now is that hurts.
Yes.
And you know that from the time you're tiny.
Right. Yes. Yes, we do, because we felt it. We were there.
Yeah. But even if consciously if you haven't felt it, that belief is running. You know, that belief is running.
Yeah.
That's scary, that's hard, that hurts, that's...
Yes. And so we reenact that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And recreate it.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
And it's so beautiful. And to witness those rebirths has been fabulous.
It's life-changing, yes. And
so
we can
amazing.
recreate it. So many people that perhaps had cesarean,
Yeah.
you know, that is so traumatic, because you don't have decision. You don't have the connection and the authority.
Right.
It's taken from you.
Oh, wow.
So you can recreate that, and you can move through the birth canal and know that you're in charge. This is your birth, that you can have it the way you want it.
Wow, that's amazing.
And Alaya, one thing I appreciate so much about you, because I've had the privilege of being at her home and waking up in the morning and seeing her there meditating on her couch, and the hours and hours and hours of your life that you have devoted to bringing more awareness and more consciousness to all of us. I just can't thank you enough. My life is different because of you, and I thank you for that. And the heart-centered therapy training has been so powerful for me, so I'm excited to help spread the world. And like Michelle said, you travel the world teaching this. You're out of the country as much as you're in the country, right?
Yes.
Teaching, and I'm so thankful for that people everywhere are getting this information.
Thank you.
And do you do sessions over the phone for people? So could people all around the world call in and have a session with you, or do you do it in person? Are you home enough to do sessions?
You know, it's interesting. I do sessions, but what I have been focusing on recently is working with the people that I'm in community with and my family. That my family is coming to me and asking me, and I'm just like so committed to support us, because they are me.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, every once in a while I do sessions, but it's not my calling. I love to be able to work with specific people that can carry the work too. And I do have people that, like you, are a fabulous therapist that you too could, you know, I could refer to you with great confidence.
You've got students throughout the world.
Yes.
That we could refer people to.
Yes, and if you speak German or Spanish,
Yeah.
Polish,
Yes. Great.
Icelandic.
Great.
And so people wanting to connect with you, they can come to your trainings that you
Yes.
teach throughout the
Yes.
world. You also have your beautiful heart meditations
Yes.
that they can purchase on your website. So give them the information for the website.
That would be Chikly Institute. You can www.Chikly Institute and just go online and
.com?
.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
.com. Yes.
Great.
And
Right.
find us there. And you can see all the classes. My husband and I are together as a team putting out classes. He's an osteopath teaching the brain, lymphatics, all kinds of incredible techniques for advanced practitioners. And we also have the lymph curriculum, which is fabulous, a fabulous beginning in really advanced body work,
Oh, wow.
connecting to fluid and
Her and her husband are the dynamic duo.
Yes.
They're so amazing. Between you, you cover all 4 bodies and beyond.
Yeah.
I think.
Correct.
I love
Without
him.
doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
so
quite
great.
a guy, and to meet him is really a great thing, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah,
Well, again, thank you for making that opportunity to choose healing, because it really is healing generations and people all over the world, and that's just a huge amount of people that you yourself are affecting because you chose to go to your heart, and
thank you.
we appreciate that.
Well, thanks. I feel that. Thank you.
We love you.
I love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.